Hello and welcome back to Down the Slope. You've had a week off from us, but we're back. We've missed you. I hope that you've missed us too. However, speaking of people missing, we've got two off today. A certain Mr. You and a certain Mr. Greg were away in Budapest on a stag do. We're probably not feeling too well today, but I've got the magnificent Liam. Liam, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, mate. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad, mate. I'm not too bad. I'm excited to talk about Hibs. Obviously, very good result at the weekend. So, should we just get fired straight into things?
Aye, let's go for it.
Yeah, so super. Obviously, you were at the game. Everybody else was outside the country. So, when you got to the ground and you seen the team sheet, what was the initial impressions?
I was quite chuffed with the team, to be honest. It was quite. I thought the midfield three kind of deserved to kind of keep their place. It was good to see the new boy get a start. Always excited to see guys who've come in from obscurity make their debut, and also good to see a sort of settle back five with a team that did okay against Kilmarnock. So yeah, happy with it.
Yeah, my vibes were relatively similar, and then it kicked off, and within 5 minutes, all those hopes and dreams were dashed. Aberdeen got off to a very quick start. Good ball over the top. Marshall dealt with it well. And then, personally, thought it was quite a good goal. Not really a well-worked set-piece routine, but they passed it quite nicely around the box. It kind of got drilled in about shoulder height, and then that Duke boy managed to flip it over Marshall. What do you think of the goal?
The goal was an accident. It wasn't intentional. They get very little credit for it, to be honest, other than managing to create the space to get a ball into the box. It was basically a fluke.
Harsh words from Liam, but we love to see it. Was there anybody defensive what you think could have done better there?
Nah, not really, because there's pressure on the ball. I mean, the obvious thing is obviously to stop the cross. But crosses are going to find a way in the box from time to time. I thought Port just reacted well. I think he's kind of put them under a wee bit of pressure. I think it was Porteous anyway. Nothing really for us to do differently, because as I say, it was a fluke.
And love a segue. And speaking of reacting well, I think that this isn't the first time this season Hibs have reacted relatively well to conceding a goal. I think that we kind of took the game by the scruff of its neck, obviously very early doors where we conceded, but I think we kind of went on to just dominate the game from there, to be honest. Aberdeen didn't really look up to much. They seemed quite content to score their one goal, try and sit in it for 87 minutes, which is never really a solid tactic. In the first half an hour of the game or so, were you happy with how Hibs responded?
I thought we were the better team throughout. I thought we were the better team for the entire first 4 minutes before Aberdeen scored as well, to be honest. I'd probably say the first half we were the better team without really putting it on them. But we did create a few openings, quite a few half chances, the odd chance. There was nice tempo to our play as well at stages. We were doing that thing where we were looking to get forward quickly. There was a couple of passes which were frustratingly kind of intercepted, that were kind of met with a few groans from people around me. But I thought generally we were pretty good for really the entirety of the first half, to be honest.
Yeah. Was there any standouts? Just asking a couple of extra questions, just aware of the fact there's not too much content to dive into.
I thought Paul Hanlon was very good again, quite quietly. Paul Hanlon had a good first half. I thought there were some very promising touches from Kuharevich, is how I'm going to pronounce it. I don't know if that's right or not, but I thought some of his touches were excellent. He looked as though he was someone who had the ability and the strength to be able to bring others into play and hold defenders off, and he did that well. He looked to get Boyle on it quite a lot as well, and then at points to quite good effect as well. So there was plenty standouts, I think.
And in terms of carving out opportunities, we didn't really carve out too many clear-cut ones. Ewan had quite a nice shot from range, and I think the keeper done all right to save it. It was kind of an unexpected save, but a good save nonetheless. And then it came to Liam Scales, got himself booked, absolutely a booking. About 2 seconds late on Campbell and nearly snaps him in two, so I think the ref was well within his rights to book him. And then came the incident of the game, which I was watching on Aberdeen TV, well, Red TV, and what's his name from that absolutely embarrassed himself because he would not stop going on about the penalty that was then given. Liam, talk us through it from your perspective in the stand, and then if you've had a chance to look back since.
I have seen the clip back. It's a penalty. I mean, he's Porteous initiates the contact, but Scales then continues to hold on to him and effectively just drags him to the ground. I think it's ludicrous to suggest otherwise, and I think if it wasn't Ryan Porteous that was fouled, I don't think there'd be quite so much noise about it. So I thought Jim. We'll talk about Jim Goodwin later. Let's just talk about the incident in isolation. It's a penalty for me. Just on the basis of the contact and where it is, it's frustrating because you see it happen quite a lot and it's not given. So I can understand some fans' frustration, but I think to call it, I've heard it referred to as cheating and conning in the last few days, I think is very, very, very wide of the mark. The one thing we missed out, which was quite an important thing we missed out, was we should have had a penalty earlier on in the first half as well. Ross McCrory with a blatant handball. Lionel's looking straight at it. We were off his him because we could see it from the top of the east. It was clear as day. Hand was up in the air above his shoulders, and the Lionel should see it. And you'd probably in the case say the referee should see it because it was that blatant. So we probably should have gone in with 2 penalties at half time, but we didn't.
Yeah, apologies, I completely whiffed on the McCrory one. It was one of those ones that was that daft, I almost forgot about it. It reminds me of the one, I can't remember what Jambo, I think it was away to Aberdeen. The ball was going out and he essentially just jumped and smacked it before it went out of play and gave away a penalty. Do you know the one I mean?
Nah, I can't think of it, to be honest.
It was really daft. It was when they were like proper bad. It was like relegation fighting heart stuff. But yeah, no, obviously Stonewall a penalty on McCrory. The one, like, I would probably be slightly peeved if the one was given against us. I think it was quite stupid from Scales because the thing is, like, Porteous runs across him and then Scales makes contact and Ryan Porteous takes advantage of that and leans into him before making his run further, which he's entirely entitled to do because Scales had made the contact. But for me, I don't think that he gets booked for the foul. I think he then gets booked for the dissent because the referee literally pointed away, like, go away 3 times, and that's when he pulled the card out and sent him off. Because for me, if he's getting booked for that, that's a horrendous booking. But if he's booking him for dissent, understandable because he said piss off and then he wouldn't. So yeah, and then I was going to say the time of the game completely switched from there, but it didn't. We went into halftime. Aberdeen made a very defensive substitution after Boyle tucked away the penalty, and I was very confident of the win. I know that 10 men is something that we've been coming up against a lot so far this season. But yeah, how were the vibes in the stadium heading into the second half?
Probably one of the expectation I talked about after the Kilmarnock game. I think when the opposition goes down to 10 men, people become expectant and maybe become a wee bit impatient as well. They really want to they want the team to get on the front foot and start making things happen. And we did, but it was maybe just a wee bit, took us a wee bit longer to get there than perhaps people would have liked early on in the second half.
Yeah, that's fair, but I think we did come out with a good intensity. I think that we proper got the ball down and stretched Aberdeen when we were playing. I just thought that overall it was a really good performance. It's one of those frustrating ones again that I think we've had a good half of football, but because we've not been clinical, fans haven't been happy with the performance. Because I thought the first half, we were really, really good. I think we went into halftime having like 9 shots, which compared to the rest of the season so far is really impressive for Hibs. So I was pretty chuffed with that. Any other reflections on the first half before we move on?
To be fair, we had 25 shots on goal against Kelly as well, so like we've not been shot shy. I have no complaints this season so far with the number of chances we're creating. That's the issue for me is whether we're putting the ball in the net often enough. I think we are creating chances. I look at every one of our games. Maybe we've not played scintillating football for 90 minutes of all those games, but we've even the game against Livingston that we lost, like we created chances. There was chances in the St Mirren game as well, which one in particular that stands out that Ewan had. So I've no real complaints with our creativity. It's just that cutting edge in front of goal. You look at it, and Ewan's still not scored, and he's played every game. I think started every game for us so far this season. Kuharevich has come into the team. Obviously, one game can't judge him too much, and Martin Boyle's got a couple of goals, albeit one's a penalty. So, we're not scoring goals at a rate. Josh Campbell's our top goal scorer so far this season. I don't think many people would just guess that after 7 games. So now the chances are there. We just need to make sure that we've got someone on the end of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And then speaking of chances, before the goal, was there any standouts for you in the first half that you thought we really should have taken the lead there? Or sorry, second half?
Not that I can remember, to be honest, mate.
Nah, no, me neither. So let's
I don't
find out the
remember
goal.
individual chances. Like, you need Ewan on the podcast for that.
Actually,
I remember
there
every
was
fucking thing, every like nothing hanging in the football game. He'll remember it.
there was one thing that I remember, and it was the man of the match, Mr. Campbell, got the ball played over the top of him, and he was 1-on-1 with the keeper.
Oh,
And
aye.
he really should have cut it back. That was he was having such a good game up to that point, and I thought everybody's going to start booing him and cheering him because he'd made one mistake, and it was quite a big one. And I found that really frustrating because
we were not ahead at that point though.
were we? I don't think we were, because I think I was annoyed.
That the one where he like
scored.
hits it right at the keeper's legs, like when he basically
Correct,
goes right through. Aye. I
yeah,
thought we were
because
ahead at that point. I maybe misremembering.
I was
I thought we were 2-1 up.
I was annoyed because I thought I'm sure he were. That was a bad one from Campbell. But let's talk about the goal. The goal itself was really well worked. I was really impressed with it. I thought it was quite delightful. Talk us through it, Liam. Can you not remember it? Oh, the one it was kind of played through. Cadden made a really nice run, and then it pulled the centre backs apart, and then Campbell got played through 1-on-1, and he slid it under the keeper to the right. And it was quite a poacher's finish, to be honest. It does. I think Lee Johnson compared Campbell to Frank Lampard in his playing style of late, and it was a very Frank Lampard-esque goal. In terms of an exact comparison, I'd probably say Kai Havertz in the Champions League final, but Campbell's a bit better than Kai Havertz is, so I don't think that's a fair comparison for Josh. But yeah, no, it was a nice goal, and it gave us a 2-1 lead. So we were all.
Was that a Chris Cadden assist? Was that a Chris Cadden assist as well? Chris Cadden, who doesn't make assists, apparently doesn't. Oh well, people didn't say that. They just say can he cross the ball?
Aye, yeah. Was it a Chris Cadden assist? I can't even mind. We need Ewan back on the pod. Ewan's our stats guy. He remembers every detail. But yeah, and then one thing just before the goal happened, Noah Kenna. I thought he had a pretty good first half. It stopped off after about 55 minutes, and Jake Doyle-Hayes came on. I thought another impressive performance from Jake Doyle-Hayes.
He was fine. I could see why he took Ken off, because when we're dominating possession in the way that we were against Aberdeen, there's not really having a huge amount of value in having a kind of midfield stopper like that on the pitch, because Aberdeen showed no ambition really to get out their own half. So the substitution made sense. I thought Doyle-Hayes was fine when he came on. I don't think he did anything spectacular, but I also don't think he did anything wrong of note. Helped shift the ball around, kind of laterally mostly, but it was a decent performance.
We all love Jake Doyle-Hayes on the podcast. Obviously, been on the pod, so listen to that one if you've not already. But yeah, and then as time dwindled down, Hibs just kept knocking the door even after we took the lead. Aberdeen really struggled to get out their own half, and then eventually we got the ball out wide. I think it was Ewan that clipped it in for. I'm going to call him Michaela because I don't want to mess with his surname. And then he knocked it down for Campbell, and then another poacher's goal gave us a 3-1 lead. Yeah, really, really good 2 goals from Campbell.
Aye, no, the third goal, I remember it was simple as it can be, but it was good to see Kaharovic winning the ball in the air and kind of getting the knockdown, which, I think, Doidge provided the knockdown for Campbell's assist against Rangers, but I don't really think we've had too many instances in recent times where we've got a big guy in there who's winning some of those balls aerially. So I think we're kind of seeing the value of having a 6'4" centre half that can 6'4" centre forward that can jump.
Yeah, and it's nice to have it's a proper different change of pace. Like, I know Doidge is kind of a similar type of role, but I think that Michaela, he just looked really comfortable. I thought he was an absolute nuisance. I think it's something that Hibs haven't really had much of in the last few years. Like, we don't really have players that are a bit of a handful, and I think that he really is. I'm getting nods there from Leo, so I'll take that as a good point, Harry. And then the only action from Aberdeen in the second half, we, again, after we scored the third, we kept on attacking, but then eventually they counter-attack and got the ball on the break. Bada bing, bada boom, ball put into the back post. And Majowski, he needs to score there, doesn't he? That was a bad miss from Aberdeen's perspective.
It's a bad miss. You can kind of see why it's happened, though, because he's sort of falling over as the ball comes to him, and he knocks it wide. It still doesn't take away from being a really poor miss, but it's kind of almost explained away by the fact that he's already on his way down, strangely. When there's no one near him, so I don't know if he's just lost his balance or whatever. He's kind of maybe leaning too much on one side. It was one of those good way moments, which we all love to see.
Because it saved us from what would have been a very squeaky bum time last 5-10 minutes. So I'm very glad that he decided to bottle that chance. And then, not much really happened for the last few. Hibs kept on the pressure, but Aberdeen, quite a spineless performance from them, in my opinion. I just didn't really think they looked like they were at it at all.
Nah, they were poor, to be honest. 11v11, they were poor. Didn't agree at all with any of Jim Goodwin's comments, unsurprisingly. I didn't agree that it was an even game, 11v11. It wasn't. We were by far the better side. Aberdeen didn't really show very much ambition, which is quite surprising. When actually I thought, when I looked at the team, I thought, oh, well, they've got a wee bit in the final third. Because I think, the boy Dukes had pretty good reviews. I think that the number 10, the Dutch winger, who's prone to diving, I think he I think has looked pretty decent since he tipped up in Scottish football. And obviously the guy Miovski they paid £500,000 for, so you'd be expecting big things. On the face of it, looked like quite an attacking lineup, but they didn't really show any intent to attack at any point in the game, to be honest.
And one stat, I believe it was from Pye and Bovril, Aberdeen haven't won an away game since St Johnstone last August, which is utterly baffling. Like that is horrendous. Like, imagine a full calendar year and you've not won away from home. Like, even Hibs under, like, in the Calderwood Fenlon era were winning games away from home every once in a while. Like, that is shocking.
Is that right? They've not won an away game since
the league, I don't believe.
And right, yeah. That's. Because I heard some Aberdeen fans saying, "Oh, we didn't win games unless we're away at." Nah, that's not right, mate. They beat St Johnstone like.
Was it this August then?
This August.
Leighton Clarkson. I misread the stat then. Unless Pine Ball hopefully we didn't run in his class. All right, ignore me. I'm an idiot. Wait, was it one win?
Maybe they said something like they've not won anywhere apart from Almondvale or McDermott Park since the start of last season or something like that. I'm sure.
Well, thankfully, we've got Liam to keep me right when I'm making stupid comments and misreading things. But then there was quite a few bits of fallout after the game from both Jim Goodwin and Michael Stewart come to mind for myself. Jim Goodwin's comments, absolute deflection tactics, as you said. Just really, I do think the club need to take some form of action against it. Singling out someone to the extent of, like, pretty much bullying. I don't know if you've seen, like, the handshake after the game where what do you call it? Goodwin tried to do his best Thomas Tuchel impression against Conte, just embarrassing himself. He's a grown man.
He did embarrass himself. He contradicted himself massively as well. I thought in the interview where he said, I told my players before the game not to get too tight, and I warned the referee about it and all this carry on. And then he then proceeded to say, I don't know what Liam Scales could have done any different. And I was like, well, for beginners, he could have carried out the instruction that apparently you said you gave him before the game. He completely contradicted himself, and I was like, you've gone into this interview, you're still angry because of what's happened. You've not taken the time to just compose your thoughts, get across what you want to say, and you've just blurted out a load of nonsense. And he kind of came across quite classless, to be honest. It was really poor. That and the fact that he's again, singling out a young guy who he already knows there's an existing narrative against. So you're just seeing all the usual suspects jump on it over the last few days. Not surprising. Everybody kind of contributing to this bandwagon effect of, oh, isn't he terrible? Isn't he this? Isn't he that? Isn't he a cheat? He's not cheated. There's not anything that he's done there that is anyone close to being conducive of cheating. It is just the whole thing that has just been built up way beyond actually what it was and what it should be. If his player just did what he was told to do, we wouldn't even have having this conversation.
Absolute mic drop moment from Liam as usual. But yeah, and then the other comments were from Michael Stewart. I believe on our next section we've got a few fan questions relating to it. But just before we move on to that, Michael Stewart said that Hibs shouldn't be too comfortable with where we're at in terms of our point getting because it keeps on coming against 10 men. we don't decide to play against 10 men. People make fouls against us and referees send them off. What do you want? Why should we not be happy about that?
He's missing something really vital there as well. The fact that we're playing against 10 men for a reason, like because our play or our style of play, depending on how you look at it, has forced the opposition into making those decisions. And the more you dominate the ball and the more you control games, the more likely those things are to happen. There's maybe question marks over a couple of the red cards I've seen in some of the games, but that's not our fault. Like, and those decisions have gone against us often enough. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. I thought it was quite a pure comment, quite a classless comment again from Michael Stewart, who, if I'm being honest, I think I used to think he was all right, to be honest. I've never really had a problem with him until recently, but his nose seems to be out of joint with Hibs for some reason at the moment. I don't know what it is, but he seems to want to dig us out. I know the guys in Longbang spoke about this quite a bit already, about not being enough Hibs representation in the media, and I've got to say I'd have to agree. I don't think there is really a Hibs voice that's out there, particularly in the BBC, who's representing the club, who's going to stand up for us. Seems to be kind of dominated by ex-Hearts, Celtic, Aberdeen and Rangers players, to be honest, with a bit of kind of St Johnstone and some other clubs thrown in. I would like to see a more prominent Hibs person representing us and sticking up for us in the media, and not an ex-striker who used to have blonde highlights and put lots of brow cream in his hair before anyone suggests.
Yeah, I was going to say, please nobody suggested that as a voice of reason. That point.
Anyone but.
Mate, get me like Alan O'Brien back speaking on behalf of Hibs instead of that. If he rocked the blonde tips even better than him. But yeah, just before we move on to our final section, which is turned into my favourite, give me 3 players that overly impressed you, your 3 standouts from the weekend.
I was just going to go for the obvious ones and leave you with none. Campbell, Newell and Kuharevic.
And a bit of justification for why for each one.
Josh Campbell, I don't think I need to justify it any more than he has done already. He's 2 goals, he's shown, I think, incredible mental strength to come back and be the player he's been so far this season after some of the criticism we got last season. I think it'd be remiss on me on this podcast to pretend that we didn't criticise him last season, because I think some of us were very critical of him last season. But he's been excellent so far at the start of the season, to be honest. Can't fault his performances. Joe Newell's a funny one because he frustrated me at points during the first half, actually. I felt like he was kind of taking too long on the ball in possession and wasn't quick enough to get it forward. But I think he probably changed his tack slightly in the second half and recognised with them playing with 10 men, he's one of our better distributors in midfield. When he gets the ball, he can typically kind of see things and make passes that probably the other 2 in midfield that are playing with him can't. So he's a very important player when the opposition goes down to 10 men. He's a tempo setter as well. So I thought he did that much better in the second half. And then I think Kuharevic, I just think it was just the fact that seeing something a bit different up front, a guy that we can play off of, a guy that looks mobile, who can link the play up. I think he also will make the players on the outside of him better footballers as well, with his ability to take it in and turn. He won us a couple of good free kicks as well, just backing into Stewart and making life very difficult for him. I thought he was a fucking bomb scare, by the way, that Anthony Stewart. I don't think he looks a good player at all. Can't believe they made him captain. But no, I thought probably those 3 would be the standouts for me. But there were some other contenders as well, played well.
No, definitely, as you said, you've definitely taken the 3 that I probably would have went for. In terms of one that I've been critical of a lot of the season, I want to give him credit when he's actually played well. I thought Ryan Porteous was really good. I'd say it's his best performance of the season by far. Not that the bar was particularly high for that, to be honest, but I thought that his distribution of the ball was a bit better than it's been in recent weeks, even though there were a few times. But then just his composure, like in and around the area, I think something that's been a bit lacking this year. He seems to have missed timed quite a few things, but I thought that he was on the ball pretty well. And then Boyle, I think, is starting to show a bit more flashes of Boyle. I don't really think we've seen too much of the Boyle that we had last season, and I think that he's starting to hit the ground running a bit more. So it's definitely something to be excited about. I think as soon as he gets back to like that 100% Boyle, I think that it'll feel like another new player's joined because he is that good when he hits like his peak. And then my final one, I love Chabraya. I think he's a very fun player to watch. I like players that aren't necessarily the flashiest. You know what I love? I love left backs and full backs that actually do their job. I feel that there's so many people that are like, if you're not setting up a goal a game, you're a crap full back, which just isn't the case. Like James Tavernier, Trent Alexander-Arnold, they can't defend. They're glamour players, but I feel like Chabraya is good enough at defending and good enough at going forward that you can actually enjoy watching him play football without being stressed. And I think it's refreshing.
Aye, he's good to go. He's a good player. He's kind of become my favourite Hibs player very, very early on, to be honest. Probably after his debut against St Johnstone, I just decided he was the guy that I was going to really get behind this season. I think he's got a very, very, very cultured left foot. I think it's only a matter of time before he's racking up a few assists. I would like to see him take free kicks as well, to be honest. Joe Newell had a free kick in the first half where it was just completely powder puff. And as much as I like Joe Newell as a player, he's not a guy I want to see hitting free kicks from 30 yards out, because I just don't think he's got the requisite power in his left peg to trouble a goalkeeper from that kind of distance. I think Chabraya's had one effort so far for Hibs, and I think I'm maybe right in saying it hit the wall. I think he's got a good enough looking left foot that he should be on more set pieces for us potentially than he is.
I would fully agree. The only thing that's a problem with that is for some reason, he is quite a pacey player, but B. Johnson likes to keep him back for set pieces.
He's not. I don't think he is quick. I think that's maybe the one sort of flaw in his game. I don't think he's slow, but I don't think he is particularly quick. I think he. I'll be honest. I think if he had pace, I don't think he'd be at Hibs. Like with left foot that good, he looks a pretty competent defender. If he was quick as well, yeah, I think he'd be playing at a high level. I genuinely, based on the 6 or 7 games that he's played for us so far, I think we'll have him for a season, maybe 2 seasons, and I think he'll go off and make us some money, because I think he's probably just based on the qualities that he's got, I think he's probably destined to play at a level slightly higher than this. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on what you look at.
Well, if he's going to make us a fair bob, then I won't complain, because we've seen some of the money that's been floating around in Scottish football over the last summer, which is a really positive thing. And hopefully he can be the Hibs instalment of that in a couple of years' time after he's helped win us win the league. But yeah, and now that's the Aberdeen game. Overall, really great performance. I think that you must have left the stadium happy with all the other fans that left. I was sitting buzzing down in London, and it's nice going into the international break without those good vibes. Obviously, at the time we were up to 4th, but now I think we're down to 6th, which is still not a bad position to be in, all things considered. And I know you'd like to wait till the first full round of fixtures, but isolating the first 7 games of the season, are you happy with the performances so far? Do you think that we still need to give it another few until it take shape properly?
Oh, we need to give it a wee while for it to take shape properly. There's no way you're going to be the finished article after seven league games. And a few kind of pretty meaningless-ish League Cup fixtures. I think the midway point in the season's fair to kind of not maybe judge an entire managerial reign, but just see where we're at in terms of league position and see where we're at in terms of, I think, sort of overall style of play. And I'm probably right in thinking, because of the World Cup, that midway point in the season's probably going to come a wee bit later this year, I would imagine. So I'm certainly not I'm not really paying any attention to the league table. Someone said that we were 4th after the game on Saturday, and obviously a couple of results not going our way on Sunday meant we've dropped down to 6. But to be honest, I'm just not looking at it yet. It's just too early to really set any kind of benchmark. I also think there's some teams who kind of league position is maybe slightly artificial, just in terms of the games that they've played so far this season. So we'll see if they're still there or not come the midway point.
Yeah, certainly Mr. Robinson at St Mirren's doing his utmost to prove you wrong. Off to a very good start to the season. For some reason, they just keep beating everybody at St Mirren Park or whatever it's called these days. What's it called these days?
So it's like the St Mirren something stadium, international stadium or something. I have no idea.
It used to be Love Street though, eh?
That was a previous ground.
That's a class name for a stadium. Why would you not just keep it? Eh?
Maybe because they moved away from Love Street and didn't want to call it Love Street when it wasn't on Love Street. I don't know,
Oh,
yeah.
but guys, we're coming to the point that is my very favourite part of the season so far. It's something that we started just after the summer, and it is listener questions. We ask you guys on Twitter, send in any questions that you've got for us guys to answer on the podcast, and we've got quite a few to get through. So yeah, let's get cracked straight into it.
Cool.
First comes from Jeff Ashton. Jeff, we love you. You do tend to send us statements instead of questions, but if we find a question out of it, we will answer it. Jeff said the second half against Badloser's 10 as opposed to McPermiton's 10 was like night and day. Pace, switch of play, tactics all spot on. I'm feeling slightly more optimistic for season, especially with Super Kyle nearly back. Is it fair to be a bit more optimistic about things after that performance?
Aye, like I'm always regarding against getting too high or getting too low after wins and defeats. It's a good result, beating a competitor, a rival who are in a similar sort of footing to us. 3-1 at home is always a good result, but it's just so early. I'm like Jeff. I was feeling really positive, thinking come away from the game, we've got some really good signs, some green shoots in terms of some of the new players and new acquisitions we've made. And actually, when I think about players that are going to come back, there's probably still 2 or 3 that I would think are going to come back and be starters for us as well, who will improve that team even further. So, all in all, yes, you're okay to be positive. I'm going to give you the seal of approval. It's all right to be positive.
You're not getting a grown flower, but you're getting a little seed of positivity.
Aye, a wee seed.
You love to see a little sprinkling on top. And then one more for Jeff. He sent a few. If we get time at the end, then we might come back to them. He said Harry McCurdy at the game in the loudest LA Jackers jacket I've ever seen. Saw him up Leaf Walk after the game, posing for selfies with fans. When was the last time we had a renegade like him? In a good way. Love his attitude. Hoping the footy lives up to it. And the rule is you're not allowed to say Boyle or Cummings because they're too obvious. So last renegade.
I'm not happy as a Boston Celtics fan. I'm not happy about him being a Lakers jersey wearer because I just don't like LA. Yeah. And to be honest, it's a rivalry that Boston have had the better of over the years. So I suppose I'll let it slide on the basis that Harry McCurdy is probably officially the new fans' favourite. I can't really remember anyone who's sort of come in who's been, other than the 2 you've mentioned. Because Boyle wasn't really a renegade when he first came. He's kind of developed into a character at Hibs, I feel, rather than he came in like a character. Whereas Cummings probably was more of a character. I don't know, how far back are you going? Chick Charnley or something like that. I don't know when last time was we had a character like that. I suppose Latipi was a bit of a renegade in some respects, but he was in a bit of a more kind of quiet-ish way. He did probably more his talking on the pitch, whereas McCurdy's going to be a big personality. But I think that a big thing of that is the advent of social media. Social media has given players a lot more personality, hasn't it? That didn't really exist. So it's probably not really fair to compare him with players from sort of the pre-social media generation. Have you got anyone in mind?
I don't know why Joe Tortolano sprung to mind. I remember Dad saying he was a bit quirky back in his playing days, but that might have been his eccentric style on the pitch. And the fact, I believe he used to get tanned before games, and he'd always look like he was just back from Spain.
I think he was in and I'm maybe misquoting this completely, but I think he was in an advert in the newspaper for buy at home tanning beds. I seem to remember there being a photo doing the rounds some years ago with George Tortolano standing next to a sunbed. He was I think he was one of those players who was a wee bit of he's before my time, right? So I can't really comment too much, but I think he was kind of one of those players that was quite a cult hero, but maybe that was more to do with off-field stuff than on-field stuff. So you could be right.
But thank you, Jeff, for that question. And moving on to Kevin Wilson, one of our friends that joined us on the space that we done for the transfer deadline day. He said, did Saturday set a benchmark for how we can play under Johnson, and how much more do you think there's still to come? Also, is it concerning that no forwards apart from Boyle have scored yet? I think in terms of the benchmark of performance, I think that is set a high level that we now know that we can perform to. It's something that, as you alluded to earlier, I don't think that we can expect week in, week out. It's still a bunch of bricks falling into place before we have that actual system set. So I think expecting that higher performance week in, week out is probably a bit much for the moment, but I think it's definitely something we can hold the team to, that we know that they can now perform to that level. And in terms of forwards, personally not too worried, just because we're still getting results and we're getting goals from all over, because under Ross, when we finished third, for the most part, we were getting goals from the strikers and nobody else. So hopefully we're starting getting goals from everywhere else, and then the strikers, as soon as they hit form, we're going to be laughing. But your thoughts quickly on those two questions, Liam, just in terms of, do you think that's a benchmark set now?
I think Johnson maybe said it himself. I think he thinks we can get better, and I definitely think there's a lot of aspects of the game that we can get better at, particularly in the final third. We've spoken about a couple of those things already, so I won't labour them. In terms of the strikers, I think Yuan, I'm a wee bit worried that he's not scored, because I think there's elements of his game where he's maybe trying to force it a little bit now. He seems to be getting, I don't know if it's his style of play, but he seems to get the ball at the feet and then want to take 5, 6, 7 touches, which is not really it's not really aligned to the style of football that we want to play a lot of the time, particularly if he's coming deep to pick it up. And I think he's snatching a wee bit now at chances. It's like that kind of classic thing about trying too hard. But as for the others, I don't think you can really hold it against any of the others that they've not scored so far, because Karavich has only really played one game. Deutsch has now gone out on loan, so that's not our problem for the rest of the season. We don't really have anyone else like that's fit. Bojang, I suppose, who's missed a couple of good chances. So fair enough. I mean, I suppose the Bojang one's maybe a wee bit concerning. But he's probably not. Whilst he's had a couple of really good quality chances, he's probably not played enough minutes to really judge him harshly for not scoring. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously you can judge him for the missing the chances, but to say over the piece, has he had that enough time on the park to really critique him for it? I don't know. I don't think you can give him too much stick, to be honest.
And the thing is, for me as well, like, I think if your strikers are being involved in goals, like, obviously Yuan's not scored, but he's set up 2 for Boyle. Gurevich, I've attempted his name for the first time, I probably slaughtered it.
Good effort. I think.
He set up a goal at the weekend with a knockdown, as we mentioned earlier. So, you know, like, being a striker, obviously, you want them to be scoring a goal a game. That's the dream, but it's unlikely to happen at Hibs, and it's not the entire game. Like, strikers can still be impactful for teams without scoring every week. And I think that they have been like, a lot of fans are quite high on Yuan, and I think rightly so. I think he does seem like he's a good player. But yeah, no, I think valid question. So thank you for that, Kevin. And moving on to Dav Williamson. He said, thoughts on Kenna's start, both as an individual, but also what his presence brings to the team that allows Newland Campbell to play further forward, and also thoughts on Yuan's performances in brackets. I thought he was quite poor on Saturday myself. So starting on Kenna, both as an individual and also what his presence brings to the team. And I think that kind of overarching season so far, as opposed to just this game individually.
Kenna so far, very mixed, I would have to say. Worryingly, probably been dispossessed a couple of times. I think he's thought he's had more time than he's actually had. The positives of Kenna is I think he does disrupt pretty well and wins the ball back a lot more often than he loses it, which is, you know, maybe almost a prerequisite of a defensive midfielder. But he does give us a bit of physical presence in there as well, and I think people maybe overlook that, the importance of having a wee bit more height in the midfield as well as being quite an important trait, particularly when you're playing against like kind of long ball merchants that you come up against this league, you know, playing off goal kicks and stuff like that. So I think Kenna very mixed. Yuan, I think he's been quite poor the last couple of games, to be honest, or certainly 2 out of the last 3. He's been quite poor, but he had played really well up until that point, and probably, you know, deserves to keep his place in the team because of what he's given us down that left-hand side and the continuity as well of having him and Boyle either side of a centre forward and trying to develop those relationships. So very mixed on both, to be honest, but I think the one thing that I would be reassured with, I think, is there's enough quality there in each of them that I think, given time to develop, I think they'll turn into good acquisitions.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the main concern that we had with Kenna as soon as he was brought in. He is still really young. Like, he's not a veteran of the game at all. He's still a teenager, I believe. So he's still got a lot of maturing to do. I think his performances have been good. And yeah, I think in terms of, like, I think even when he's not performing great. I still think he brings a better balance to the team than the Doyle, Hayes, Newell and Campbell trio that we've seen previously. And then in terms of Yuan, yeah, I would agree. But I think I always like it when a player's not finding the net and they're still wanting the ball a lot. I think that Yuan's never really shying away from the ball, which is nice. And there's a few times when he's not been given passes that you can see him visibly frustrated and stuff for not getting the ball. So I think that's positive. But yeah, no, he wasn't particularly great on Saturday, to be honest. Question for myself: do you reckon for the game against Ross County after the break, do you reckon we see the same front three? Do you reckon McCurdy comes in? Because I was thinking potentially McCurdy in for Yuan. Because I don't think McCurdy up front at the moment in this three makes sense, just on how effective the three was at the weekend, in my opinion.
I think you'll go with the same three. I think Karavic played well enough to justify starting the game. I think he's mobile enough as well as a big man to be able to play relatively kind of sort of, I don't know if fluidly is a word, but in a fluid system. So I would go with the same three. I wouldn't be changing it, to be honest. I think McCurdy will have to earn his way into the team.
Yep, fully agreed. Next question comes from Richard_O1875, and he said, another class display from Newell. When will the Hibs Boo Boys lay off him? Being honest, I didn't want to say it because I've said it a few times, and I don't want to seem like I'm being overly harsh on him. First half wasn't overly impressed by him. I do think that second half he took over the game, and I think he was pretty dominant in midfield. I think that everything that we done pretty much either came through him or started through him, which was really nice to see. But I would like to see him put together a full 90 minutes, which I believe he done against St Johnstone, and he's not really done too much since. I didn't catch the full Kilmarnock game, so he might have done a bit better then. But what about yourself? When do you think that the Boo Boys will lay off Joe Newell?
I don't know. It's maybe just me. I don't think Joe Newell gets that hard a time from Hibs fans. I think this is one of these myths that's kind of being created by Twitter. I don't see. Josh Campbell gets quite a bit of stick and has had quite a bit of stick. And Paul Hanlon gets quite a lot of stick. Porteous is starting to piss people off as well with some of his stuff this season, just in terms of distribution more than anything, and time he's taking on the ball and maybe slowing things down. I don't really hear Joe. Maybe just it's the bias around where I sit, but I don't really hear a lot of people digging Joe Newell out, to be honest.
Yeah, that's fair. Richard, if you've got anybody in particular you want to call out, then please do let us know. Barney with them. But Liam, I'll let you take this question specifically because I feel it was almost you that said it through Dave Graham, who said, is it time for a 60-minute countdown clock that runs only when the ball is played, reduce time wasting and build more excitement for the last few minutes, etc.? Liam, your thoughts?
Did Dave listen to our episode a few weeks ago? I think the answer is yes.
Yeah. Again, it's one of those things I don't think football.
It's a no-brainer.
Okay, no-brainer. I'm not going to argue with Liam when he's passionate about it.
No. Are you going to give me a counterpoint? Are you going to give me a counterpoint? Go for it.
I just think that in some situations in football, I think that the odds are so stacked against you, time wasting something that can give you an advantage. So I think that this rule, although it would make big games more exciting, I think that it would make, like St Mirren against Celtic, for example, I think that they didn't time waste not relentlessly, but I think that they did use it to their advantage in the last quarter of the game, and I think that they were substantially less likely to win if that playcock thing was in system, in my opinion.
I'm not sure about that because what we're saying is that the system at the moment isn't broken because we allow for the minutes to be added on at the end of the game. Now, that's not for everything. I suppose that's just for substitutions and injuries and goal celebrations potentially as well. I don't know what all kind of gets added into that time, but I would suggest that if the system at the moment is not broken, like, why don't we test that it's not broken and actually put a play clock in place that runs alongside the game clock and actually see how much of the time the ball is spent in play in a normal game versus how much time would we need to actually play a game, if that makes sense. Probably not explain that very well, but I think because Dave said 60 minutes there, I think 60 minutes is probably too short. I think you're shortchanging football fans if you only get to see 60 minutes. But then I did read some statistics last season about how little time the ball spent in playing. In some teams' cases, it was a lot less than 60 minutes. So I don't know, man. You can still disrupt the flow of the game with the play clock being out. So there's other things, there's things that you can do to disrupt the flow of the game. Like booting the ball out and fucking like Rocky did against Arbroath, where he fucking just about put it in the sea. Going down with cramp every 2 seconds. It doesn't impact the clock if it's on a stop clock, but it would still impact the flow of the game quite significantly. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, I think it's fair that we run a poll at some point this week, because I think it's definitely a debate that's worth having. And we've got no football. But next question is coming from Mr. Sean Steele, who unfortunately is going to be missing Greg this week, so can direct his question towards Greg. But who is the best at FIFA out of all of you? And I think, to be honest, it's probably me. In terms of gaming, I'm probably more than the three of you combined. And I've definitely racked up more hours on FIFA, I think, than the three of you combined. So if we had a FIFA tournament with just the Down the Slope boys, no offence, guys, but you'd all get pumped. It'd be quite an easy day for me.
I've not played FIFA for 10 years, so I reckon you'd probably beat me about 7-0 or something. I'd probably still be trying to hit finesse shots for 35 yards in the top corner like I did 10 years ago. That was the only thing I had in my armoury. You'd beat me.
You know what I reckon we'd have to do, like me going like a half-star team from Ireland, and you'd have to go like classic 11 to try and balance the game out, and I'd be scoring with keeper runs and that. But I'll stop being a dick. And then Sean asked, who is speckier, me or Harry? No offence, Sean, I'm sure you are very specky, but I feel that on behalf of the podcast, we have to assume that I'm the speckiest person on the planet, just because how much flack I get for it. So on this occasion, you have lost the specky competition.
Would agree.
And then thank you, Sean, for that. And you and Craig asked, how many pints of Jim Goodwin tears have we collected now?
How many pints? Fuck me.
Because he used to cry a bit during his playing days at Easter Road as well. I remember I think he got red carded twice at Easter Road.
If he got red carded twice, he should have been red carded about 20 times, because I remember a lot of games where he got away with absolute fucking murder at Easter Road. I used to get so angry watching him play, and I'd get even angrier when someone who sat a few seats along from me would come out with a shout, "We should sign him because he would make our team so much better." I was just like, oh, no, can you imagine? Because we've had versions of him who we've then written off because they weren't capable of playing the Hibs style of play. And it's easier. I always think if you're like a Jim Goodwin or like an Alan Power type of player, it's always easier to be at one of those small like underdog teams like St Mirren, because you spend so little time in possession in the league that you're kind of there to do one job and you can fulfill it. So he was murder to watch as a player, and he was a bit of a fuck as well. So he's a fucking cheat calling anyone else out in their behaviour. He was a fug on the football park, like.
But in terms of pints, I reckon as many pints as we will have after we win the Scottish Cup in May, which is probably 17 per day for the next month and a half. So you work out that, so 17 times about 45 is how many Jim Goodwin pints of tears that we have accumulated thus far. So thank you for that question, you. And then Dave Thompson's asked 3 questions, but just for the sake of time, I'm going to pick one of them, which is, who selects pundits for sports team? And I'm assuming that's a scathing question.
Imagine they've got in effect like a casting kind of director for pundits. I would imagine it's how it works, and that person's paid to go and source people to come on the show. Because I don't know how you get into it, because it seems to me it's very strange, because it's quite homogenous in that you have to have been an ex-player to be a pundit, and that's the only pool that they fish in. So you've got that whole brigade of, oh, you only can the game if you played that brigade, which I think in itself is quite interesting. They've obviously tried to add a wee bit more diversity into it in recent times by having like minority ethnic and female representation quite clear as part of the coverage. But they've not really looked at diversity from any other point of view. Like, how are they getting actual fan views across in the game? I do think there's something missing there. We talked about lack of Hibs representation. I think that's an issue from our point of view. But I think broader than that, I'm loath to talk about it because I know, again, the long banners guys have done it already, but talk about guys like fucking Willie Miller and Packy Bonner. Like they should not be still on Sportssound in this day and age. Alan Preston as well. He's another one. Like they're just so out of touch with the game. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. I'm getting annoyed thinking about how bad they are at the job, and they're getting paid pretty well to do it, apparently.
I think it's one of those ones as well. Like, remember the uproar when Gillette Soccer Saturday essentially had an overhaul of their guys, kind of the passing of the guard of the old guys that were doing it, and then brought in a bunch of new people. And a few of them, I think there was a woman as well, and everybody was livid. Like, I can't believe they're replacing these legends. Like, Gillette Soccer Saturday was downhill for years and years. Like, they needed to change that, and I think Scottish football,
BT's been better than Gillette for years. Sorry, mate. I've cut across you, but BT's been streets ahead of Sky for a long, long time now. A long, long time. I've not watched Gillette Soccer Saturday for probably 5 or 6 years, unless it's been on a pub somewhere. It's absolutely finished. It's dreadful. I can't even bring myself to watch the new version of it because I know that is it Jamie Mackey and Lee Hendry and that are on it. I'm just like, they're so fucking beige, and they've not had interesting careers of that at all. Like they're just these guys that have just played in England, who've played for Championship shite. I've no interest in watching
it. We had a similar question from Ake at Shin Bapper. So we're not going to answer that just because essentially it says should we be looking at people outside of ex-footballers for some here analysis, and the answer to that is yes. Should get people that actually know football in the modern day as opposed to, as you say, these dinosaurs that haven't interacted with football in many, many years. And then Jack Kell asked, what did you make of the link up between Newell and Chabaraya on that left-hand side? What did you make of it?
It's developing. I would say that it's definitely developing. I see the two of them looking for each other quite a lot, playing 1-2s. We seem to be quite keen to kind of go out to the full backs when we get the ball out, and so the ball back inside is quite off and on. So they're two good footballers. They should be able to get on the same wavelength and understand each other. But I think it looks promising.
And Jack followed it up with saying, if it was your birthday tomorrow, and where would you go for a birthday meal? And then in brackets, Harry, maybe try something that isn't chicken, rice, and broccoli. So yourself, Liam, first, where would you go for a birthday meal tomorrow? And it's a free budget as well, so you can go anywhere you want. You can have it you want. It's on Jack's treating you.
I don't really like going to like super expensive posh places because I just feel very uncomfortable sitting there, to be honest. So I'd probably pick something like quite kind of cheap and cheerful. I wouldn't be too worried about budget, but it'd be probably some kind of Mexican food. There was a Mexican restaurant I went to in Mexico years ago when I had just the most fucking incredible like, I don't even really know how to describe it. It's like kind of like a Mexican sort of stew thing, like a beef stew. It's fucking incredible. So I'd probably choose that.
Unbelievable. There's a couple that sprung to mind. I love Miller and Carter. And the Dundee United game when that was cancelled, me and some of the boys went there, and Bex as well. But I've not been in years, and I love a buffet, so I'll be going to Cosmos, like the one just next to Ocean Terminal. I absolutely love just stuffing my face.
Next to Ocean Terminal?
Unlimited food. Not Ocean Terminal.
Omni.
Omni,
Sorry.
I know, I always get them confused. Speaking of Ocean Terminal, though, there used to be a place called Handmade Burger Co. And it was like top corner of it.
It's good.
I had an amazing view, and you used to get these like burger sliders, and it was like 3 burgers, and then one of them was like peanut butter and jelly on a burger, and it was bloody unbelievable. It was so good, but now they've shut down, so RIP to them. More dead than Rangers. Jokes.
I didn't actually know that. I didn't actually know that it closed. I take it that was something that didn't survive through the pandemic. So I used to really enjoy going there. I used to do the milkshakes and that were unreal, but they did. I can't remember what they put on them, but the fries were really, really good. I did loads of good things with them. I'm going to just let how you've pronounced burger slide, because that's the most weird pronunciation I've ever heard of burger in my life. But
Burger.
Mate, I
Did I
don't
say
know
it
what that.
weird?
I don't know what that is. I actually don't know what that is.
Burger. Burger. All right, we'll work on that off camera, but thank you for making me self-conscious. I don't think the actual company's closed. I think it's just the actual
That's that one. I can get it somewhere else. I've never been to Ewan and Greg rate it quite highly. Butterburger, still never been there. Quite fancy trying that.
Next DTS out, and let's make it happen. And then Keith Robertson has been listening to my show and asked, is there cause for concern that a fair chunk of our points are being earned against 10 men or less?
Sorry, what?
Is there cause for concern that a fair chunk of our points are being earned against 10 or less players?
Nah, not really, because I don't. What you got to do? No earn the points. Do you know what? That's a bit of a facetious response, but the option would be what? I don't know. I just if we didn't go and win those games, people would say we didn't have enough points. We're winning the games against 10 men, and people are saying, "Oh, is it cause for concern?" No, it's not a cause for concern. We're winning the football games against 10 men, and to be honest, based on the teams that Kilmarnock, Aberdeen, and St Johnstone put out against us, none of those three sides showed any ambition to win the game against us anyway. So they would have been sitting back for the majority of the game. So I'm genuinely not concerned by it. I think the media are making a point out of it because it's glaringly obvious, and that's what they do. They point the obvious out. But not a cause for concern for me.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think you can only play what's in front of you, and as we mentioned earlier, we don't decide how many players the opposition has on the park. That's down to the referee, and as you say, it's our play that's causing that to an extent. So yeah, I don't think, definitely not cause for concern. Is it maybe worth using that as a lens to look at the overall season? Potentially. I don't think it's that problematic, but yeah, valid question. Thank you very much for that, Keith. And then Luke Cunningham said, who is the most good question. Who is the most overrated player in the league just now, and why? Is it Ryan Kent?
Oh, I've discussed Jamie Murphy. I've said it already. Shocking footballer.
It's like, see, the thing is, on the ball, it can be quite explosive, and it kind of shows off sometimes, like in the Europa League. But his end product, shocking. He should, for the money they've paid for him, he should be banging in minimum 15 goals a season, or at least having like 25 goal contributions between goals and assists. It's not good enough. He's not good enough. Ryan Kent, I don't like you. I don't expect you to like me. And we're not friends. And then thank you for that. Look, Raymondo asked, have you seen the film Groundhog Day?
Yes.
Never gets old. Thank you, Ray. Chris Bell asked, is Josh Campbell our number one midfielder?
Nah, I think there's too much recency bias at play there. Nah, he's done very, very well at the start of the season, but I don't like ranking players and positions and who's number one and all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't cheapen myself to that anyway. But nah, he's not our number one midfielder.
Yeah, I would say, is he our number one in form midfielder? I would say yes. But realistically, there's not really too much competition in that sense. But no, he is playing really well. I'd say he's had a solid 8 out of 10 performances in his last 3 or 4 games. So I think fair play to him for definitely shut a lot of people, myself included, up. So yeah, fair. If he becomes our number one midfielder, we'll be very happy to eat all the humble pie that he feeds to us. And then Marty at the Walkie 7 asked, how many penalties has Ryan Poaches won us in his hits?
1 up until Saturday. It was a foul from Joe Shaughnessy at St Mirren, I believe.
Oh, was that the handball? Did he not kick a ball against someone's
Nah,
chest?
Joe Shaughnessy. Nah, St Mirren under Jim Goodwin last season. Joe Shaughnessy throws him to the ground. I think that's the only other one. It was someone else on Twitter shared it this week.
Nice. I didn't know there you go. So that's two then. He's at a 2 of total. And then one of our favourites, Ryan Melville 92, said, funniest shout you've heard it again.
Oh fuck! I saw this earlier and I meant to try and think of something, but I can't even remember it. There's a boy down for us. It's quite funny actually. In the East, I think he sits maybe 2 rows down for us, and he's always got like a sort of zippy thing. Not always, but he wears it a fair bit. I don't know his name. I know his face, obviously, but he comes out with some funny things. He's like one of those guys that even when it's like all quiet, he'll just still shout something, and I normally gets a few laughs. Quite a funny wee guy. But nah, I can't think of anything specific. Sorry.
I've got 2 that sprung to mind. They might not sound funny in context, but they made me laugh. So I was at Accrington Stanley because one of my mates from school sports Accrington, and then they were playing Cambridge, and then the referee decided to book an Accrington player who made a late challenge, and then some random posh woman sitting like 3 along from me shouted, "You're so rude, referee!" And it was so shit and so funny because of how feeble it was. Like the referee is rude for booking a player apparently. I think that
came what the worst chant is. The fucking worst chant I hate the most, and I've heard this every English ground I've been to, is when English fans start shouting, "You don't know what you're doing, you don't know what you're doing," to the ref. That is hands down the shittest chant going.
It's pretty poor part. Like they've got a few stinkers. XX get battered everywhere they goes, another for me. But the other one, Ian Murray, I've got a soft spot for East Fife, as I'm sure a lot of people know. And I was at East Fife against Airdrie, and then one of these Fife, I believe it was fullback Mercer, absolutely cropped the boy from Airdrie round on the wing. Boy was a bit dead on the floor, and the linesman didn't flag for a free kick. And in a really feeble voice, Ian Murray shouted, "Help him, linesman!" So then every single time a decision went in the way of Airdrie, me and my mates were shouting, "Help him, linesman!" And Ian Murray, after the game ended and they got beat 4-2, stormed in the tunnel, and it was the best reaction I've ever got out of a manager, even though I do really like Ian Murray. But yeah, that's my 2 favourite shouts. It was "So rude, referee" and "Help him, linesman." But thank you for that, Ryan. And from what I'm aware, we've only got 2 more questions. We're coming towards the end. So Dan Taylor asked, how do Jim Goodwin's tears taste?
Like very sour, bitter grapes.
Oh, grapes. Okay, so no salt in yours. It's a bit more sour in this
Just
department.
sour grapes. Really sour.
Have you ever cooked chicken and then kept it like a day too long and had a sniff?
Oh, mate, don't. That makes me want to be sick in my mouth.
Apologies,
It's absolutely horrid.
I've not tasted that. But that smell is what they taste like, so it's not good. I wouldn't advise drinking them. It's nice having them in a jar and swirling them about, but I wouldn't recommend drinking them myself. But final question of the day, and this is becoming my favourite question, to be honest with you. It's a double question, so we'll come on to the second part. So thanks for that, Dan. But John McIntosh said, would you say we would have won the game even if Aberdeen had had 11 men on the park the whole game?
Yes.
Definite win, no draw, confident of a win?
No, you can. We were far the better team, 11v11. We had the one.
Yep, fully agreed. And then the final question, it feels that we need to have this as the final question at every podcast now for the remainder of time. What's everyone having for dinner? Liam, what are you having tonight?
I'm having stovies. Left over for last night.
Oh.
Made stovies yesterday, so I'm having stovies again.
Nice. Is there any secret ingredient that you can reveal on the podcast, or just your kind of generic but lovely stories?
I put I don't know if everyone does this, but I put neeps in mine. Lots of onion, potatoes. Bristol gravy is quite an essential thing. Worcestershire sauce as well, and then top off the brown sauce at the end.
Lovely. And I'm happy to announce, guys, that my diet's been going well. So I'm actually eating food for dinner now that isn't chicken, broccoli, and gravy. I cannot remember the name of the thing I had. I tried to explain it to Liam earlier, but I've been on the Gusto boxes. This is not an advert, but I've been on the Gusto boxes, and I've got a Korean noodle prawn concoction going on. Apparently it's really spicy. I don't do well with spice, but it looks really good. It looks very Asian, and I'm thoroughly looking forward to eating it. I'll take a picture and I'll send it to you, John, just so you're aware of what I'm eating. But yeah, so that's what we're having. And I think Ewan and Greg are having sleep for dinner because they're probably knackered after a few heavy days in Hungary. But yeah,
here's hoping.
But yeah, thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much to everybody for listening. And yeah, that's been Down the Slope. We'll speak to you next week, hopefully. Obviously, international breaks, no football on, but we'll try and find something to fill your ear holes. And yeah, that's been us. Thanks so much.
Cheers, bye.